24 hours out from the next presidential debate, candidate Tom Steyer is surging in South Carolina, trailing behind by Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders for the lead. But some think that he should drop out and give his millions to other candidates instead. Watch this.
Tom Steyer, you just wonder why he hasn't been funding other people's races and anti-Trump movements from the very beginning of his campaign.
It's a vanity project, Joe.
Costa, Well, it is a vanity project, and it's been a vanity project for a very long time. And it's a vanity project that could help re-elect Donald Trump.
Joining me now to respond to that and other things is Tom Steyer, 2020 Democratic presidential candidate. Mr. Steyer, thank you very much for being here tonight. What do you have to say to Joe Scarborough and what he said about you today?
Look, I think institutional people inside the Beltway think that somehow institutional politicians own votes. And anybody who goes out like me as an outsider and goes and talks to voters and listens to what they have to say and makes a pitch for what needs to change somehow is disturbing the status quo. So I think that that's ridiculous. And I think in particular what they're talking about is black votes. They're talking about black people in South Carolina who I'm connecting with and talking to and who are polling as supporting me. And somehow those are supposed to be votes that are owned by institutional politicians. And I think that that's both ridiculous and insulting. You have to earn votes, regardless of who the people are. And that's what I'm down here to do, to earn votes, to talk about what's important, to talk about what's in my heart and what I care about, and to connect with people.
All right,
and I think those kinds of remarks are ridiculous.
Here's Joe Biden responding to what you've been doing in South Carolina. Watch this.
What's happening is you have Steyer spending hundreds of millions, tens of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars out campaigning there. And so I think a lot's happening in terms of the amount of money being spent by the billionaires to try to cut into the African-American vote. I think that has a lot to do with it.
What do you say to that?
Let me say this, Martha. I've spent more time in South Carolina than any other candidate. I've been on the ground talking to people, and there it is, Joe Biden saying, cutting into the African-American vote. The implication is that he owns the African-American vote. He doesn't have to earn it, that it's something that institutional politicians from Washington, D.C. somehow own. That's ridiculous. Let's be clear. That is insulting because the implication is that African-American voters aren't out there listening to candidates, listening to what they have to say, trying to figure it out. Okay. That's actually what they are doing. That's why I've loved South Carolina, is actually being here and talking to those people about what's going on here, the problems they're having with clean water, the problem they're having with in terms of what they get paid, the schools, the housing situation, healthcare. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm not sitting back and saying, who is down there taking away the things I own?
Well, let me ask you this, because, there have been stories, I'm sure you've seen them out there, that complain about the fact that you paid more than $40,000 to rent a property that's owned by Jim Clyburn's daughter, and that a California-based bank that was founded by you loaned $1 million to one of Mr. Clyburn, Congressman Clyburn's son-in-laws on its board, and they say that you have been sort of trying to, buy favor through these mechanisms with your business. And now the word is that James Clyburn is expected to endorse Joe Biden.
So we're not doing that. That's not true. I knew nothing about that. That bank is a nonprofit bank that is designed to support businesses owned by black people, Latinos, and women because they've been discriminated against. It was set up 15 years ago. I've had nothing to do with it because I've been involved politically. So those are absolutely ridiculous untruths. And there's an implication there that when we go out and spend money in organizing in African-American communities, which we are doing, 60% of the people who are organizing for us are within 20 miles of where they were born. That's actually how you do political organizing, and that's exactly what other people should be doing, because that's what we're doing.
All right. With regard to African-American voters, the Atlantic did a piece recently that said that, that Democrats are not doing a good job, actually, of reaching out to minorities in the way that they used to. And when it comes to Latino voters, they say that Latino voters are telling them, according to their research, that they don't like being treated as sort of a one-issue group. that immigration is not all they care about. Now the Trump folks look at this and say, you know what? We can grow the Latino vote. We can grow the African-American vote and bring these voters over to the Republican side because wages have been going up, employment rate has been going up for these groups. What do you say to that?
Look, I have been working with the African-American community through our bank and through political organizing for decades. I've been working with the Latino community for 35 years. Do I think when I go into those communities, people say to me all the time that politicians have been breaking their promises to them? All the time, every single day.
Yeah.
So in fact, what I see, Mr. Trump's lying on the economy. He opens his mouth. He talks about how good he's on the economy. He stinks on the economy.
But you know what? It doesn't matter what he says. What matters is whether or not what people feel. You've got 60% in the Gallup poll say they are better off today than they were when President Trump was elected. That's not me saying it. That's not him saying it. That's voters saying that.
And there's nobody pushing back with the truth. Because I am on the ground.
I'm talking about people who are expressing their own experience. That's not people saying, that's people saying, yes, I do. I think I'm better off than I was 3 years ago. You're saying someone's manipulating that?
That is a series of people repeating. That is people repeating what Mr. Trump is saying, and nobody's pushing back. And I am pushing back.
Don't you think that takes away the agency from these individuals who have been polled? You're saying they're not smart enough to know whether or not they're doing well?
I am looking at what Mr. Trump is doing. He has given a gigantic tax break to big corporations and rich people. He has a failed trade war that I believe his own administration has admitted has failed. He has said that he was going to balance the budget. He's blown up the budget deficit. And now he says that after the election, he's going to solve that problem by going after Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. No, I don't think
he said he was not going to go after
Mr.
Social
Trump
Security.
has done a
I'm just stating
I
what he
don't
said.
think that Mr. Trump has done a good job in terms of the economy for working people at all.
Well, that's the argument that will be laid out on both sides. And we thank you very much for being here, Mr. Steyer.
Yes, it will.
And we'll be watching tomorrow night and as we move forward to South Carolina. Thank you, sir.